Legacy. It's what you pass down to your children, and to your children's children. It's what remains of you when you're gone. Many hope to create it. Many more hope to live up to it. Very few ever succeed. The legacy of this show hopes to be about what Westeros means to us, and what we hope it may mean to a new generation of fans, and the generation after that. Boasting discussions that will endure, passions that will rise, debates that will make the small council jealous. With a combined 44 years of experience behind a microphone, the hosts and guest hosts of this show are dedicated to the fans' experience interviewing anything from Westeros, Essos, and beyond. This group is not the house of a lion, a direwolf, or even a dragon. This is a fraternity, a lineage, a house that endures beyond sigils, and aims to leave a legacy no other podcast has. So it's time to call the banners, for this is the House of the Empire.
Man, what a bit of a throwback that intro is. Back when I thought I could actually do voiceover work, and you actually thought I could too. It is another edition of the Legacy of Westeros and the House of the Empire. Welcome to our house. I'm Zach with Sean, and we've got a really laid back and fun episode in stock for you all. As a part of the anticipation of Season 2 of House of the Dragon, the both of us are at different phases of our rewatch of Season 1. And the whole concept of this episode is just going to be talking a little bit about the beginning part of that season and what we might try to hope for in Season 2. So it's going to be a very straightforward episode, but hopefully a really fun one, because we don't have this bullet point outline that we need to get through in, a half an hour or whatever. We're just going to take our time and see where the winding road of Westeros leads us to. And I'm pretty excited for that, man.
That was a blast from the past right out of the gate. And I don't just mean like, hey, there's the old House of the Empire intro, but in the intro, there's references to Call the Banners, Fandom Fraternity, like right back to the beginning of us doing anything together solo. So it definitely has some feels, and you know what? It might just stick for this one. Why create a new one if that one's there? Just need Fandom Empire logos.
I really had a fun time with Call the Banners, because that was a very unique and different take on exploring the world of Westeros. Instead of doing it episode by episode, we did it house by house. And we had a whole episode that was dedicated to House Targaryen, a whole episode that was dedicated to House Martell, a whole episode dedicated to House Stark. And that was really fun. And it's part of that legacy that ends up incorporated into things like the Legacy of Westeros. It's not just a television show's legacy. It has to do with our personal connections to each other and personal connections to this show and to this franchise. And so, yeah, there's multiple layers to that. And it was fun listening to it and seeing how much of it applies to the show House of the Dragon, because we didn't have this concept for this show or really much of anything to talk about regarding House of the Dragon when we made that intro. And it's interesting to see how well it applies to another series, another era of the same world and the same franchise.
It definitely works, not only just for House of the Dragon and where they're at now, but calling back to Call the Banners. And that was a unique sort of rewatch podcast we did. We weren't watching them live, but we were rewatching Game of Thrones, and we were doing it through the different families rather than the order of seasons, which was definitely a very unique way of doing it. And then Fandom Fraternity too. Like it takes me right back to when Jade did those 2 big Bristol board posters that was the Game of Thrones season 8 death pool, and we had your name up there and a bunch of other people's names up there. There's
Yep. Yep.
there's so many of us in it, and like that takes me back because like Jade and I are just first getting together there. There's there's no Jensen, there's no Bolin.
Wow.
It's a long time ago now, right? So
and now you have your own lineage and your own legacy.
Yeah, and if you want to give me a break from that at any point, you let me know. No, I'm excited to get into this, man. I guess the first thing I have to admit is, and I don't think I realized it until we were sitting down to start the episode the other night, is I think I was a little afraid to rewatch this series. And I think the main reason for that is normally, if I like something as much as I at the time said I liked House of the Dragon, I would have went back and watched it way before right now. Like we're over a year and a half removed from when that series debuted. And what I was doing is I was watching the episode the night it came out. And then if Jade couldn't watch it with me, we'd watch it the following morning in between my shifts. Other than that, I hadn't rewatched any of this. I remember feeling very positive, very hyped about it. We have a new setup here. So like we have a TV that supports Dolby Vision and Dolby Atmos and surround sound.
Nice.
And I've never seen anything Game of Thrones in 4K. Not proper 4K anyway. And like it really is a different feeling, that cinematic experience, the surround sound, the dragons, just the sound design that they put in it. Like, because this is a show that's made to be viewed like that. Not that you can't view it in any other way, but like, I guess I was really worried it wasn't going to live up to the hype, man. You wait that long and then you're getting all hyped for season 2. And it's like, well, I haven't even rewatched season 1 yet. Like, it's nowhere near as fresh to me as any season of Game of Thrones would be because of how many times I rewatched it. So there's definitely a level of fear heading into it. How about you? Did you think that you were going to enjoy it as much as you did the first time around? I don't even know if you did yet, and we'll get into that. But like, was there any hesitation about rewatching it at all?
I don't know if hesitation would be the right word. Procrastination, perhaps. And then I also think being as married and as busy as I am, you have to be really deliberate about what gets your screen time. And sometimes we're watching some newer shows, sometimes we're watching sporting events, sometimes we're, doing a rewatch that's just simple while we do some, things that we need to do around the house, or we're working on our computers or what have you, and we've got, The Office on in the background or what have you. But this is a show that requires a lot of attention. You can't be on your phone. You can't be on your computer, or you're going to miss a line, or you're going to miss a sequence, or you're going to miss a look that somebody gives to somebody else. And it's all an important part of the story, especially this first season, because of how much character depth is being established over the first 6 episodes in particular. And if you're not paying attention, then you miss it. So I think procrastination is probably the best word, because I wanted to make sure that it got the attention that it deserves. And I was just in different phases of my life where I didn't feel like I could dedicate what it deserved.
You mentioned you can't be distracted. You can't be scrolling. We went to watch episode 2 last night, and let's just say I think I just went out of focus. Sorry there, guys. The kids weren't agreeing with us. So it became like it took forever to get them back down. I ended up just saying to Jade, I'm like, so do you want to just like watch an episode of Seinfeld or Everyone Loves Raymond? That way you can scroll and we can just talk.
Yeah.
Because you can't do that while rewatching the show. Not if you want to like take everything in the way you're supposed to. And so, we've still only rewatched the first episode at this point, but I got to tell you, man, for me, it was a pretty mind-blowing experience. It made me want to kind of like stop halfway through the episode and go, I need to watch Hard Home like this, like right now. I need to find a way to do that.
Oh, yeah.
But part of it's, even on a rewatch, taking the journey that it takes to get to that episode rather than just pop that episode on. It's worth
Right.
more. It's more valuable. And the first episode of House of the Dragon, man, it hits for me just as much as it did at the beginning. I was really, really worried it wouldn't. I was worried I'd be nitpicky or not like this or not like that. And I got to say, just like from a production level, the cinematography and the sound design and the acting is as good as you could possibly want from any TV show that you watch. And the characters, honestly, like they do a pretty good job of trying to give several different characters their moments in one opening pilot, because some of them don't have much time to get a moment. Like Corlys gets his in the pilot where he's bringing up what's going on with the Triarchy.
Right.
And then you get a little bit more character development where everybody else is getting their wine poured for them, and he puts his hand over his cup. It's like, no, he's there for business, not for leisure. Yeah. So like, to me, there's so many little moments in that episode that I don't think I picked up on my first watch through, because you're just trying to soak it all in. That like literally every character gets a moment. Alicent, the biting at the fingers, right? Otto is like plotting already right out of the gate. Damon, you see like this twisted, dark figure, if you will, who definitely has loyalty to family, but also has an immaturity about him that gets himself in trouble. And like they all get their moments. Emma gets her moment in this, and then obviously goes through what she does in the pilot. And I was completely taken back by it, man. I did not expect to like it on the level that I did. And I'm thrilled that I do, because now it just makes me more excited for season 2. Where were you after rewatching just the pilot? I believe, was that your wife's first time watching the pilot of House of the Dragon, or had she watched before?
No, I think she watched the first season with me on our first run through. We tried to make it a point of watching it that Sunday evening, but like you said, that was well over a year ago, and there's a lot of stuff that has been watched since then. So, for us, it was almost like watching it a first time again, because I don't think I did very many rewatches, if any, during our initial episode by episode discussions, because usually we would have those episodes on a Monday, and so I would watch it on Sunday, we turn right around and discuss it on Monday, and then move on to the next episode by the next week. And so I would say at the very most it was my third time seeing that episode, probably my second time. And so being that far removed from my first time around, there were a lot of things, like you said, that probably didn't catch on with all that much the previous times. So I think I'm with you that the cinematic experience was one of the things that really got to me, because I've seen a lot of really good movies. I've seen Oppenheimer since I watched House of the Dragon. And some of the cinematography that you see in a full-on Oscar-winning film like Oppenheimer is the type of shot selection and character depth and set design and things like that you get from a full-length Oscar-winning film. You get it on House of the Dragon. And so that was something that I was blown away by. I was really impressed with the writing. There's a lot of television out there that I'm not impressed with the writing by. And oftentimes it feels like a waste of time if I'm able to finish somebody's sentence, if I'm able to come up with the next line, and then my wife will either be like, "Oh, you called it," or she'll be like, "Ooh, your line was better." And I'm like, I fucking know. Like, I should be a TV writer. They need to do better. This is what we're paying for. This is what we get after the strike is over. Like, I had a whole rant that I went on about a week or two ago, but the writing and the cinematography were two things that were very, very impressive to me. And we may not have it in 4K Dolby Atmos, but we've got probably like a 70-inch screen in the living room, 70 plus. And so just to have it with that size and with that depth was very impressive, and it was very fun to watch.
Yeah, I was completely taken back. It's a lot that happens in that first episode. Like, you go right from what Jaehaerys is doing all the way to, Rhaenyra being named the future queen in one episode. It also slipped my mind that the Thrones theme doesn't play in the first episode until the very end of the episode, as it's focusing in on her face there at the end. We get that dun, 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 dun. So many incredible poetic moments in that first episode. Let me ask you this. I want to shift gears here a little bit because if anybody's watched anything we've done in the past, talking about how your dad feels about this series is something of a little side session we did throughout Game of Thrones, Call the Banners, what you will in the past.
Mm-hmm.
How did he feel about House of the Dragon? Can you remember what he thought about the first episode in particular, and then the series overall? Did it get him back in? Like, is he sold on following?
I think he is. Just based on what one of my favorite things. And there's not very many people that can say this, but there are several elements of my life that I have tried to include my dad on, so that we have ways to bond. And for a while, it was something like, I don't know, college football. That was our thing. And then when I started doing these local high school broadcasts, he was there with me day one. And now he's broadcasting with me. He's learning how to figure out how to broadcast solo. Like, he's learning the hardware, the software, the tech behind it. And so we've had some sports related things that we can enjoy talking about. But as far as franchises go, he was never super into Star Wars like I was. He got me interested in Star Trek, but his favorite was The Next Generation, and mine ended up becoming Deep Space Nine. So not even in Star Trek did we have similar mindsets. But we can talk about Thrones. And that was surprising to me, because it's a very adult show. Let's be honest. There's a lot of cursing, there's a lot of blood, there's a lot of gore, there's a lot of violence, there's a lot of sex, there's a lot of titties popping out. Like, there's all kinds of stuff that you would not expect somebody in their late 50s, early 60s to be gravitating towards the way that my dad has ended up gravitating to it. And what I did during Thrones was I asked him to hold off on episodes 9 and 10 of a season until I could watch them with him. Because that's generally things like Blackwater. You know, that's the 9th episode of season 2. And that example is up and down the entire series. 9 and 10 is where a lot of the really good shit happens. So I would ask him to wait until 9 and 10. But I introduced him to the pilot and I think the second episode. So I got to watch those with him and got to watch his expressions. And then he watched the middle episodes. I think it was 3 through 8. And then I asked him to hold off again so that we could watch 9 and 10 together. So he ended up watching 6 of them by himself. And it was really, really fun being in the middle of something back home. And he'll send me a random text that's maybe a quote from the episode he's watching. Or he'll be like, I can't believe they just did this. And I'm like, that was pretty cool, right? And he's like, yeah, it was. And so, you know, getting to geek out with him about something from this world has always been pretty cool. But I will say that the cesarean scene with Emma, he was not a fan of. And I think a lot of people weren't a fan of it. So it's not unusual for people to be uncomfortable with that scene, but there were times where he straight up had to look away. And my mom was in the room too, and she's actually had a C-section, and she's like, man, this is pretty crazy that that's what modern medicine was capable of doing back then. Like, she understands that it's historical fiction, but it's based in reality. And so that C-section scene, they were not a very big fan of. And my mom would passively watch while she's playing Fruit Ninja or Bedazzled Gems or whatever it is she's got on her phone. But my dad was locked in. He was trying to find the connections from beginning to end, and looking at the sexism in the opening scene with Jaehaerys, to looking at the changes that are made by the final season when Rhaenyra, or the final scene rather, when Rhaenyra is named heir, like he's noticing the contrast of the beginning of the episode and the end of the episode. He's noticing who the major players are, and I don't trust that guy, he says, pointing at somebody, and I don't know about this Otto fellow. So like he was really engaged, he was really into it, and it was really fun to watch all of that, not just for a second or third time for me, but to watch it vicariously through him as well.
That's awesome. I think whenever you're getting that level of detail out of it, you're obviously reading into it a lot and enjoying it for what it is, which I think is important. It's these types of shows are not surface level shows. These are meant to be deep dives and take a look at everything, including stuff in the background and how characters are reacting and how they might be reacting in the background of frames as well.
Yep.
There's a lot that's done throughout Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon that plays into a lot of little nuances like that. But yeah, I was really taken back by it. I can't wait to watch more. How are you feeling though, man? This is, I guess, your second big rewatch, or did you rewatch it once after it ended?
No, I don't think I went through it a second time. I watched some of the documentaries, the behind the scenes making of certain episodes, and learned some stuff from the interviews with Sapochnik and some of the set designers and things like that. And that gave me some interesting insights that I did pretty much right after the season ended. But as far as rewatching the show itself, this was my first full season rewatch since the show came out. And now that I've done some of those internet deep dives and I know about some of the storyline and some of the plot that's coming up next, and what some of these characters may be in for, and who may make it to season 3 and who may not, that sort of thing. I'm very invested in what season 2 is going to do to continue the adventure that was laid out in season 1. Because the whole season is tension. The whole season is this back and forth. Family squabble. Can you settle your differences? Oh, turns out we can't. Oh, somebody died. Okay. And then the last scene, the season finale, you turn around and you see Rhaenyra's face, and there's like sadness and bitterness, but also anger and resolve. And then you just cut to credits, and you're like, son of a bitch! Like, you just see it in her face. She didn't have to say a freaking word, and she's letting you know that war has been declared. But that's what, like, frustrates me to no end, is the fact that we haven't actually seen any warfare. We've seen a couple of dragon spars. We've seen a jousting tournament in this pilot episode. There's been some hand-to-hand combat, not a lot, but a lot of this is the wheels turning and the players taking up their places on the board, and now it's time to make the moves. It's time for the next thing to happen. And I think that's what I'm most excited about after that rewatch is it's time for those next moves to happen, and we're in the year. We are, weeks, couple of months away from actually seeing it transpire.
Yeah, instead of a late August release date, we're getting a June release date. So that's a bonus. It moves up a couple of months. We're only like 4 months away or so. I'm stoked. I can't wait to be doing episodes on that over here and breaking them all down. I guess what I would ask you about season 1 specifically, though, is rewatching it this time around. Did it live up to the expectations that you had set? Did it surpass them? Like, I think whenever you're rewatching something all the way through from beginning to end, you're always wondering, are you going to like it more? Are you going to like it less? Are you going to like it about the same? Where did it fall for you? I can't really get into the specifics of each individual episode because I haven't rewatched it all yet. But
Right.
The series as a whole, where were you with it?
So I will not classify it as one of the best seasons of Thrones that I've ever seen. Like, as far as the stuff from Westeros in particular, there is a slow burn to this season. and not as much payoff as you get in other seasons of Game of Thrones. By the time you get to the penultimate and the season finale, shit's really hitting the fan. But in this one, not quite as much. And I wouldn't say that that's disappointing, because the next season is basically going to be all warfare. Like, the things that they did really, really set the stage for that. But I actually think I ended up enjoying it a little bit more now that I know the outcome, now that I know what it's going to end on, and what this season's purpose is, as far as developing the characters, understanding alliances, understanding family history and lineage and things like that. I don't know if I fully grasped all of those things in the first season. And maybe I got a little overly critical because I was like, I want dragons to burn shit up, and they weren't doing that. And I withheld, like, obviously, like, I held back, and I was appreciative of what it was when we did our podcast episodes on them. But I think there was a part of me that was getting impatient and was like, this needs to do more. I need a little bit more from this. This time around, now that I knew what it was, I think I was able to just enjoy it and appreciate it for what it was, rather than be sitting in anticipation of something that was not to be. Does that make sense?
No, it does. It makes perfect sense, because like I sort of had the same thing going into the first episode. So I'm sitting here giddy about watching the second episode. And the best part is, like, I've only seen this stuff once, right? So like, it's, I know some of what's coming, technically I know it all, but like, I don't remember it all. So like, there's going to be full on scenes where it's going to be like, oh, we're here. Or, oh, we're there. And that's exciting to be to still have it that fresh.
Yeah.
I just think it did everything that it needed to do to get people back on board. I wouldn't put it up there with the top 2 or 3 Game of Thrones seasons, in my opinion. But I'd put it somewhere in the middle of Thrones, probably.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
And again, like, that's really all they had to do, is come out and be that effective. It didn't have to be the best, but if it could stay away from being the worst.
I think during one of our previous discussions in anticipation of season 1, you made a statement similar to that effect, saying if it can be 70% as good as the original Game of Thrones was, it'll be fine. And I think it was. I think it's probably in that 70 to 75% of what made the original Game of Thrones so great. You've got some standout characters, you've got some standout writing, you've got some beautiful set designs, some great cinematography. There's a lot of depth at play, and you can tell, like, how much detail and attention was paid to everything from the lore to the costumes to the integration with, Paddy Considine talking about the Song of Ice and Fire in front of Balerion the Black Dread. Like, that cavern didn't get a whole lot of screen time in the original Thrones, and when it did, it was dusty and old, and here it's revered and special. And to have that type of integration, and to have that kind of exploration of things that we knew were there but didn't get to touch on a whole lot in the old Thrones, this season and these first couple episodes in particular do a really good job of reminding you of the essence of Thrones without trying to be a carbon copy of what made the first one so great.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of great points there, man. I like that you brought up the whole Song of Ice and Fire bit that they do at the end of episode 1, because I'd meant to and I forgot. They do a really good way of, even though this show takes place like 172 years before the birth of Daenerys and like 190 some odd years before the events of Game of Thrones, it does a fantastic job at still being, in a way, a direct sequel to that show. Right off the bat, they're mentioning Daenerys and letting you know, hey, this is how far we're removed to it. And then you come full circle at the end where, oh no, we're flat out talking about the prophecy, and guess what? It lives with you, pardon me. And it makes you wonder, where all this goes, and like, does the prophecy get lost? How does it come, basically to Ned? Because Ned essentially has Ned doesn't have the Targaryen part of it. But they know the long night's coming again. So like at some point, obviously something happens and that starts being passed down, and it makes things interesting. It made it such a close, in the musical cues too. It made it such a close tie
Yep.
to the original series that it was like, hey, even though we're a couple hundred years removed from that series, the places are still, if not the same, very similar. And the locations in Game of Thrones, much like the Star Wars, are like a character themselves. And
Mm-hmm.
we didn't see Winterfell in season 1, but we know we're going to see it in season 2. And like, yeah, there's not going to be Jon or Ned or Arya or anyone like that, but like Winterfell itself is a character. The Wall is a character. And I thought that they did a lot of that was done in season 1 in a very good way, that it still felt like, hey, this is the same sandbox. It's just a little different because it's, a couple hundred years before. And I think if they can continue to do that heading into season 2, it keeps a lot of DNA from Thrones.
Well, and it gives, like, I don't really know for sure if this is a creative liberty or not. I'm going to assume that it is. But this is one particular creative liberty that I'm okay with, because not only, like you said, does it integrate with the Game of Thrones TV series, but it also provides plot points. Like it's not just thrown in there for the sake of being thrown in there. This is something that is a driving force of who the king is and who he wants his daughter to be. And Rhaenyra ends up, not to jump too far ahead, but she ends up having that concept on her heart for decades. And when her father's on his deathbed rather, she approaches him and was like, "Did you believe in that prophecy?" Like, this is something that she's been stewing on for a long time, about that being part of her destiny. And so it drives the plot forward. It drives the character development forward in a way that maybe something else wouldn't have. She sees a bigger picture and understands that there is more to this than just being a queen on the throne. I think a lot of people who don't have that context, as viewers, we have it, but there are people that she knows and people that she interacts with that don't have that context and think that she's just being selfish and just wants the throne. But we know from watching the previous show and from hearing that conversation that there is more to her character than meets the eye. And that is the essence and the beauty of Thrones writing and Thrones character development, is that there's always another layer. There's always more to it. And I love that incorporation of the Song of Ice and Fire, because it's not just a one-off reference. It's a critical part to the story.
Yeah, no, in its own way, in my opinion, it makes it a direct sequel without it having to be, 20 or 30 years removed from the series. It makes, it incredibly important, even the dagger, how many times they focus in on it. And,
Right.
there's so many thematical things that are moved over from one series to the next. And I do think that's one of the problems you would have run into with doing that Long Night series. It was going to be like 5 or 10,000 years before this. Like you would have lost a lot of connected tissue, other than the Night King, obviously, which would have been, the big one. But like, you'd lose a lot of the nuanced things. And instead we get them. And I think they're doing them at such an incredibly high level. And I can't wait for season 2 and can't wait to watch the rest of season 1 over again.
So you've only seen the pilot, so I know that this question may not this may not be the best time for it, but maybe we can revisit it after you've seen the whole season. But was there anything from the pilot or anything from season 1 that you can remember that maybe you would have wanted done or presented differently? Not necessarily that you didn't like it, but was there an element from the pilot, or is there something from your memory about season 1 that maybe you would have wanted to see done differently?
There's nothing from the pilot that stands out. I know some people say, "Well, I would have liked a different theme," but no, I think they made the right choice. It's still in very much Game of Thrones, and they're playing the Game of Thrones right now as we speak. So it made sense for them to reuse that theme. Obviously, it's a little bit different than the one we got in the original, but basically the same. The one that stands out to me, and I don't remember the episode number, um, but it's the funeral for Damon's wife. And they shot nighttime scenes during the day and tried their best to make it look like nighttime. And I'm guessing on your rewatch, they still looked just as bad as the first time through. Like you can have Sapochnik and all the technical wizards you want doing post, but if you're shooting something in the daytime, making it look like night's not exactly an easy thing to do.
You're talking about Lady Lena's funeral at Driftmark?
I believe so. Yeah, where like it's very clear they have shot in the daytime at night, and they've tried to bring that darken the colors of everything and make it look like night. It's all over the internet. People talk about it. I'm sure that's the only way they could get the amount of light they needed to shoot the scenes there that they were shooting, but I think it was the wrong choice because the show that's such high production quality, that episode specifically, even like the stuff with Rhaegar there, is just, it looks very bad. And my guess isn't going to be even more critical about it this time around. So,
well, the interesting thing is this show came out 2 years ago, fall of 22. And I would dare say that there have been some advancements made in video editing and just technology in general, even in the last 2 years. So I'm not saying that they'll be able to fix this outright, but maybe there is a rather new advancement that can be used moving forward to try to prevent those types of issues from coming up.
yeah, that'd be great. I just remember it being very distracting and not overly looking forward to that episode for that reason.
No, that's episode 7. Just to give you a heads up, I did a quick.
Is that the first episode that they changed characters in?
I'm trying to think.
No, I don't think it is.
No, because I think
5.
I think it's 5 or 6. Alicent's 2 sons becoming a threat to the crown. I see that Jacaerys, Lucerys, and the newborn son Joffrey that all lack Valyrian platinum hair. That happens in episode 6.
Okay.
So the change happens around 5 or 6, and then the funeral takes place in 7.
Gotcha. All right.
So you got a little ways to go, man, but I'm looking forward to getting to catch up with you whenever you have gotten further into the rewatch. Totally understand about life catching up in the meantime, but I'm glad.
I'm hoping I'm done it by the next time we're on here. We'll see.
We'll find out. You go through stuff pretty fast. I'll give you that. Like when you get into the mood for a rewatch, you'll be like the last Game of Thrones rewatch you kept me updated on. You were like maybe 10 days in and you're already on like season 4 or something like that, and I was like, oh my god. So
I need a lot of off time to do that this time around.
Yeah, and I don't have any off time to spare, none that my job will give me anyways. So who knows? Maybe a couple of late weekends or something somewhere down the line. But I'm looking forward to catching up on the entire season, and I'll have a few more tidbits that I can try to throw in about my dad's first time through, and if I get the chance, I'll try to talk to him a little bit about, if there's anything in particular about season 2 that he's looking forward to. I do remember him kind of equating that cliffhanger to something from another TV show that he watched, and he's like, man, when I was watching that show, I had to wait for like a year and a half, 2 years to figure out what happened next. And I said, well, for this one, it's coming out this summer. And he's like, this summer? That's still too long. Like he was upset about having to wait like 5 or 6 months, and then here's us waiting since October of 22. So hopefully the payoff is good no matter how long people have waited, whether it's first time through or second, third time through. I'm really looking forward to new content to talk about this summer.
Me too, man. Looking forward to it. It's probably, in terms of like entertainment things, number one on my list.
Yeah, the IPC podcast tries to do like the top 5 movies that you're looking forward to all year, but honestly, there weren't a whole lot of movies I was looking forward to this year. But Game of Thrones was right at the top of the list of TV series. We did a whole bonus episode on TV series and seasons of content that you're looking forward to. This is a high point for me, so can't wait for this summer. But there'll be plenty of other content that we'll try to touch on in the meantime. We'll have some more recaps and some more look backs on season 1, as well as any news about season 2 that may come up between now and then, as well as just any type of discussion points that may arise in the world of Westeros. So be sure to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and find us on Facebook, find us on Patreon, and find us on just about any other social you can think of. You've got our handles there on the lower thirds from this episode. And yeah, we're looking forward to whatever's coming up next. But Sean, unless you've got any other final thoughts, I think we can call it for this episode.
Take us home, man.
Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Hope that you'll be back for another one right here on House of the Empire and the Legacy of Westeros. But until then, for Sean, I'm Zach. We'll see you next time when the Empire returns.
Legacy is what you pass down to your children and to your children's children. It's what remains of you when you're gone. Many hope to create it. Many more hope to live up to it. Very few ever succeed. The legacy of this show hopes to be about what Westeros means to us, and what we hope it may mean to a new generation of fans, and the generation after that. Boasting discussions that will endure, passions that will rise, debates that will make the small council jealous. With a combined 44 years of experience behind a microphone, the hosts and guest hosts of this show are dedicated to the fans' experience in reviewing anything from Westeros, Essos, and beyond. This group is not the House of a Lion, a direwolf, or even a dragon. This is a fraternity, a lineage, a house